Step away from the house, now. 6 armed police officers stood on Jade Walker's land, forming a semicircle across her vegetable garden. No sirens, no warrants, no announcements. Just loaded weapons, tightened jaws, and boots trampling tomato vines like they weren't even real. Captain James Reynolds took a step forward, thumb tapping the side of his holster. His voice rang sharp, commanding, and contemptuous. You fit the description. That's enough for us. Jade didn't flinch. She stood on the bottom step of her porch, calm, deliberate, with soil still on her gloves and her straw hat shading her face. This is private property, she said. You need a warrant to come any closer. Don't play smart, Reynolds barked. You people always think rules apply to you. There it was, racist, loud, and shameless. In broad daylight, on her land, one of the officers, tall, young, barely out of his 20s, kicked over a basket of freshly picked squash near the porch. Another unclipped a taser. A third spat in the dirt, muttering crazy vet woman. Jade stayed still, hands by her sides, not raised, not clenched, just ready. Have you ever watched someone's peace being invaded? Without warning, without cause, just because of who they are. Tell us where you're watching from, and stay with us, because they had no idea who she was. 10 minutes earlier, Jade had been planting basil. She'd woken early, ran 5 miles at dawn, then fed her dogs Sierra and Titan before heading into the garden. Just a quiet Tuesday. Now, 6 strangers with badges were acting like they were on a battlefield. She pressed the hidden switch inside her watch band with her thumb. A soft vibration followed. Sentinel shield protocol activated. Recording initiated. From inside the house, Sierra and Titan remained on standby, their military-grade vests already equipped. Jade had trained them for silence, for restraint, for war zones. Apparently, she was in one again. Reynolds stopped about 10 feet from her porch, smiling like this was a game, but his eyes were dead cold. Ms. Walker, he said, deliberately casual. We received multiple reports of strange activity here. We're gonna look around. Without a warrant, Jade asked. Probable cause, he snapped. Plenty of it. Now, unless you want to be arrested for obstruction. He didn't finish. A drone camera above the barn clicked on, pivoting toward the officers. Jade hadn't activated it manually. It was motion synced. A backup feed began uploading footage to a secured off-site server. Reynolds hadn't noticed, but Jade had. 2 officers flanked left, moving toward the barn. Another started poking around the tool shed. One of them bent down behind it, body blocking what he was doing, planting something. Jade's instincts tightened. Captain Reynolds, she said, voice steady. You're trespassing. I do not consent to any search. Boys, Reynolds barked, ignoring her. She might be hiding something in the house. That did it. Jade raised her hand, not aggressively, just enough to give a quiet, precise signal. Inside, Sierra's ears perked up. A second later, the front door creaked open. 2 shadows moved like liquid down the porch steps. Sierra came first, amber eyes scanning, posture low but purposeful. Titan followed, 90 pounds of lean, dark muscle. They wore tactical vests marked U. CIS, Marine K9, active retired, each bearing insignia most civilian cops wouldn't even recognize. But some did. The rookie, Bennett, froze. Sir, those are military working dogs. Titan stopped in front of Jade. Between her and Reynolds, Sierra flanked right, silent and coiled. The other officers hesitated. Reynolds didn't. Control your animals, he said, voice tight. Now, they're not animals, Jade replied. They're federal assets, and they're under command. They won't attack unless I give the order, but they will protect. This is intimidation, he snapped. No, she said evenly. This is defense. For a moment, nobody moved. The breeze rustled the pine trees. A bird chirped nearby, oblivious. Then, tires on gravel. A white van appeared at the top of the hill. Channel 7 News. Lisa Chen stepped out with a camera already rolling. Captain Reynolds, she called, already walking toward them. Care to comment on what appears to be a warrantless raid on private property owned by a U.C. veteran? Reynolds paled. Jade didn't react. She just whispered to Titan. Hold. He did. Like a statue carved from resolve. They came here expecting silence. Instead, They found discipline, and now the whole world would see. You ever see the moment when bullies realize they've picked the wrong one? This was that moment. The scent of crushed tomatoes lingered in the air, warm and sour under the South Carolina sun. Jade stood still, hands by her sides. Sierra and Titan in full formation before her. Captain Reynolds hadn't moved, neither had his men. Behind them, Lisa Chen's news van had settled in like a watchdog with a camera lens. The recording light was blinking. That was enough to stop most men who weren't ready to have their names on the evening news. But Jade knew better. Men like Reynolds didn't stop because of shame. They stopped because someone more powerful was watching. And sometimes, power didn't wear a badge, it wore patience, like armor. The silence stretched. Jade didn't speak. She didn't need to. Reynolds finally turned toward his men. "Let's fall back. This isn't over." Jade watched him carefully. His voice said retreat, but his eyes said not yet. She filed that away. The officers began backing off. One of them, young, blonde, awkward, glanced back at her as if he wanted to say something, but didn't. Cowards wait until it's safe to be brave. When the last cruiser rolled off her land, Jade crouched next to Titan, gave a quiet hand signal. Both dogs relaxed, easing out of alert mode like professionals clocking out of a shift. She walked them into the house without a word, closed the door, locked it, exhaled. Then she went straight to her command desk in the back room, half living space, half secure operations hub. 3 monitors lit up as her encrypted system finished uploading footage to her off-site servers. Every second of the encounter had been recorded, from the drone above the barn, from the motion-synced dash cam, from her body audio, and from Titan's chest harness. She sat down, pulled off her cap, and rubbed her temples. It was happening again. Not Afghanistan, not Kandahar. Here, home. 15 years earlier, the desert heat had soaked through every seam of her gear. Dust clung to her skin like judgment. Jade knelt beside a blown-out Jeep, eyes fixed on the perimeter. Sierra was already 20 yards out, weaving through debris, ears twitching with every gust of wind. Walker, her CO, barked in her earpiece. 2 minutes until evac. "You clear the zone." "Almost." She signaled Sierra with a low whistle. 3 short notes. The dog paused, sat, then stared at a small pile of rock to the left. "Trap. We've got an IED," she radioed. Sierra just flagged it. "Copy." Adjusting extraction. She didn't feel fear. She felt focus. Jade had saved 6 men that day. Sierra had saved her life 3 times over in that deployment alone. But when Jade came back home, decorated, scarred, changed, no one saved her. The VA gave her a pamphlet, the bank gave her a rejection, and the town gave her suspicion. Her land hadn't been easy to buy. 5 acres of dusty clay, pine trees, and 1 rusted fence line just outside the Richland County limits. She paid cash, still. The county clerk had accidentally filed her purchase under pending for 3 months. At the post office, the lady with the sweet accent never looked her in the eye. At the farmer's co-op, they offered the white vet behind her the loan she'd just been denied. And every time a strange car slowed down outside her gate, she knew. They were checking, measuring. What is she doing here? What's she building? The answer was simple. She was building something no one could tear down. Jade hadn't planned to come back to South Carolina, but her father had died the year she retired, and the VA therapist had suggested quiet. She didn't want quiet. She wanted control. And this land, tucked at the edge of the state line, gave her exactly that. It wasn't much, but it was hers. And she'd trained Sierra and Titan to treat it like sacred ground. The dogs had changed too. After Afghanistan, they'd been decommissioned. Most military dogs are retired early and adopted by civilians. But Jade had pulled every string she had to keep them. "These aren't pets," she told the review board. "These are my team." She wasn't wrong. Each dog had over 2,000 hours of tactical response training. Sierra could detect over 70 substances in under 30 seconds. Titan could disarm a target without breaking skin. Together, they'd cleared compounds, sniffed out ambushes, and escorted VIPs through kill zones. Now, they spent most days running drills through the woods and shadowing Jade in silence. Some days, they didn't bark once, but when they moved, you'd swear time held its breath. Jade tapped into the drone footage, zoomed in on the officer who ducked behind the shed, frame by frame, and there it was, his hand. Something small, shiny, dropped behind her compost bin. A glint of foil, a bag. She froze the frame, saved it, time-stamped it, then pulled up her encrypted message board, typed one word, flagged. Within 60 seconds, a reply pinged back. Received. Linking to override hub. That was the thing Reynolds hadn't understood. This wasn't just about dogs, or footage, or even land. This was about infrastructure. And Jade hadn't spent 15 years in service to come back and be bullied off what she'd earned. Not by cowards in uniform. Not by some developer who thought black land was cheap land. And definitely not by a man who mistook silence for weakness. The message board pinged again. Override readiness status. 93%. Do you want to initiate conditional lockdown? Jade didn't answer yet. She leaned back in her chair and looked around her quiet living room. The American flag folded in a triangle above her mantel, her father's medals in a frame beside it, Sierra and Titan lying nearby, ears still flicking with alertness. What Reynolds didn't know, what most didn't, is that Jade was one of only 7 civilians in the country with root access to the Sentinel shield prototype, a decentralized, defense-grade emergency coordination system being tested in select counties. She'd been its co-designer, its field tester, its conscience. She hadn't touched that level of access in over a year. But if they pushed her, if they stepped out of line again, she could do more than show the footage. She could shut them down. Outside, the sky darkened slightly as clouds rolled in. Rain coming. She always liked rain. It made people think, washing things away, revealing what stayed stuck. She got up, walked to the porch, and watched the road. No one was there now, but someone would come again. Of that, she was sure. The question wasn't if, it was when, and how ready they were to meet someone who didn't fight fair, but fought smart. She scratched behind Titan's ears. Good boy, she said softly. Next time, we'll let them talk a little longer, just enough to bury themselves. Titan didn't move, but his eyes said he understood. 3 days before the cops stormed her land with their hands on holsters and entitlement in their eyes, Jade Walker had seen the first shadow, not a literal one, a bureaucratic shadow. It arrived as a letter, a polite, white envelope with the county seal, no postage, hand-delivered. Inside, a courtesy notice informing her that her property had been flagged for review under the South Carolina Regional Zoning Reassessment Act, effective immediately. No signature. No explanation, no phone number. Jade had read it twice. Then she fed it to the fire pit. That's how these things started. Not with sirens, but with silence. The second shadow came the next morning. A man in a charcoal sport coat parked a white SUV just outside her front gate. Didn't get out. Didn't knock. Just sat there for 20 minutes with sunglasses on, looking down at his phone. Titan barked once from the porch. The man drove off. 2 hours later, a for-sale flyer for a nearby 20-acre plot appeared in her mailbox, tucked between the gardening catalogs and a VA pharmacy refill. No address, no price, just one line in bold. Sans serif fond. The land next to yours is going fast. Don't miss your chance to sell high. She'd seen this play before, back in 2019. Jade had helped another veteran, Luis Rojas, hold on to his land near Macon, Georgia. Luis had a family peach farm, handed down since 1917. After his son deployed overseas, county officials started inspecting his water lines weekly, cited him for weeds, accused him of unpaid taxes that had been cleared 10 years prior. It all pointed to one thing: targeted pressure, and it always came in stages. First, zoning. Second, intimidation. Third, escalation. Jade had helped Luis contact a civil rights attorney, helped him rig a low-grade surveillance system. He'd kept his land, but it had nearly cost him his life. She hadn't heard from Luis in a year. Now it was happening to her, except this time, they'd picked someone with fewer neighbors and 2 military-trained dogs. Bad math on their part. That night, Jade updated her incident log. Suspicious vehicle outside gate unmarked. County letter, no legal standing. 2 drones hovering outside tree line recorded, tagged. Attempted illegal search recorded and archived. She marked each with a timestamp. cross-reference to her Sentinel shield hub. Then she made a call. A secure line. Encrypted. Biometric authenticated. 3 rings. A familiar voice answered. "Walker, you got time?" she asked. "I've got 5 minutes until a policy meeting about our nation's crumbling cyber infrastructure. So you're free?" The man on the other end chuckled. "What's going on?" "I'm being squeezed. Corporate or state?" "Both. And I think they're working together." A pause. "You want the shield pulled?" "Not yet. But I want eyes on Richland County. See if any municipal funding has shifted in the last 90 days. Especially emergency infrastructure." "Copy. Anything else?" "Cross Logics. I want to know who they've been donating to." "Give me 2 days." Jade hung up. She trusted that call. He was one of 3 engineers who'd built the original Sentinel protocol with her during a DARPA project. Back when it was just theory, now it was a living, breathing system embedded in pilot programs across 47 U.S. counties, and she had override authority. That had always scared them. Because while other systems were owned by the government, Sentinel was built by veterans, for veterans, and it didn't answer to politics. The following afternoon, Jade drove into town, not because she wanted to, but because she needed to be seen. Visibility was a form of resistance. She wore her brown field jacket, pressed jeans, and boots with the Marine insignia still clean on the side. No weapons, no smile. At the hardware store, the man behind the counter didn't greet her, just scanned her items and mumbled the total. At the feed store, the same woman who'd once asked if Sierra might be dangerous suddenly found a reason to avoid eye contact. Jade was used to it. She didn't come for kindness. She came for information. When she walked into the local bank branch, the atmosphere shifted. The manager, Rodney Kemp, was in the corner office, a smug man in a blue tie and always 2 shiny shoes. He once told Jade she was very articulate for someone from a tactical background. She hadn't forgotten. As she walked toward the counter, Rodney noticed her. His smile froze halfway up his cheeks. "Mrs. Walker," he said, stepping out of his office. "Didn't expect to see you." "I'm full of surprises." "What brings you in today?" "Just wanted to check the balance on my land loan. Make sure everything's in order. You know how fast the county moves when it wants to." Rodney shifted, then gave a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "Everything's fine, I'm sure. But let me print you the latest summary, just in case." It took him longer than necessary. When he returned, the paper was crisp, but his hands weren't steady. All current. No red flags. Like I said. Jade took the printout. Looked him straight in the eye. "Good. Because I'd hate for something to suddenly show up that didn't belong." Rodney's smile didn't budge, but she could see it. The twitch of guilt. Back home, Jade walked the perimeter of her property. The tree line, the fencing, the shed. Behind the compost bin, she knelt carefully and began sweeping the dirt aside, just as she suspected. A small silver pouch, torn on one side, partially buried. No labels, no marking, but it looked enough like meth packaging to make a good photograph. She took 3, then bagged it, tagged it, and placed it into her evidence freezer. Because now this wasn't just about pressure, it was about provocation. They wanted her angry, unhinged, anything to justify what they'd already planned. That night, a second call came in. Her contact from D.C. We traced a $50,000 donation from Cross Logics to a PAC supporting Richland County Sheriff's re-election 2 months ago. They also secured a private grant for emergency response infrastructure testing in the county, meaning Sentinel Shield, meaning they're trying to piggyback your tech. Without you, Jade exhaled slowly. And they want my land because it's within the proposed logistics corridor. Bingo. Then we're on timeline. You want to hit the switch? Not yet. But prep the legal trail. If they make one more move, just one, then I'm triggering Override X Delta, and we shut the whole show down. Understood. Jade ended the call, then walked out onto the porch. The dogs stirred. Sierra stood. Ears perked. Titan stayed down, but his eyes were open. The air smelled like iron and pine. The wind was picking up. In the distance, headlights blinked through the trees. Slow. Creeping. Another car. Another shadow. Jade reached down and placed a calm hand on Sierra's back. Not yet, she whispered. Not tonight, but soon. At 4. 11A. Mom, Jade Walker was already up. Not from nightmares, those had stopped years ago, but from instinct. There was a shift in the air, something subtle, a breeze that didn't match the weather. Titan stirred first, then Sierra. Both dogs sat at the edge of the porch, silent, back stiff. Jade didn't turn on lights. She moved through the house like breath through a hallway, picked up her field binoculars from the mantel, and scanned the tree line. Two silhouettes, low crouch, moving slow, too slow for deer, too methodical for coyotes. One lifted something, a scope or a phone. A brief flash. Jade muttered, "So it's game time." By 4:30, she'd already triggered her first layer of passive defense. The Sentinel drift net came online across her eastern boundary, an invisible geofence that mapped every movement within a 75-foot radius and auto-synced to cloud servers in Nevada. Then she accessed the back-end feed. 2 figures. Confirmed. No police badges, no infrared signature from patrol vehicles. Private, unlicensed, and close. She logged it. Tagged. Unlawful surveillance. Possible ground testing team. Time-stamped. Geo-mapped. Archived. Then she did something unusual. She opened the front door. Sierra looked up, waiting. Titan didn't move. "Let's walk," Jade said softly. No leash. No command. The dogs followed. Steps silent across gravel as if they'd trained for this day their whole lives. Which, in a way, they had half a mile out. Jade paused at a fallen log near the boundary line. Then she knelt, tied a small blue ribbon to a cedar branch. The ribbon wasn't decoration, it was a signal. An old trick from her Joint Task Force days in Okinawa. It meant, "I see you, and I'm not alone." She left it fluttering. By sunrise, they were gone. No footsteps back, just tire marks from deep-threaded off-roaders spinning east toward the development road. Jade took photos, measured tracks. The tires were ATX Hound series, used mostly by unlisted security firms and resource prospectors, not something a regular hunter would own. She made a call. Same encrypted line, same voice. "It's begun," she said. "Confirm." Confirmed. 2 scouts. DriftNet recorded paths. Tires match CrossLogix contractors. Want us to pull records? No, I want you to leak it. Pause. Public. Controlled leak. Anonymous tip to local station. Then route it to SE Civil Land Trust. Make it look like whistleblower footage. Once it hits 3 sources. "It's real," the man whistled. "You're playing for keeps." "No, they are. I'm just finally playing back." Around noon, Jade drove into the outskirts of Columbia. Not for groceries. She had an appointment. The building was modest. One of those squat office units tucked behind a failing strip mall. Sign out front. Langford and Chase. Veterans Legal Aid and Land Rights. Inside. The receptionist recognized her instantly. "You must be Ms. Walker." That obvious. He said you'd be the one who walks in like she's still on deployment. They both chuckled. "He's ready for you." 3rd door down. Attorney Darius Chase was a former JAG officer, mid-50s, wiry frame and a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow. But he was sharp, and he didn't flinch easy. "I've been waiting to work with you for a while," he said, shaking her hand. "Hope I don't disappoint." "Only thing disappointing is how long it took you to call." They sat. "How bad?" he asked. "They're not subtle. I've got scouts testing boundary lines at night, a phantom zoning letter, attempts to plant false evidence, and a private firm, CrossLogix, is funneling PAC money into local elections, all for your land, and the 5 parcels surrounding it. Mine's the keystone." Darius leaned back. "They want a logistics hub, probably tied to the federal corridor bill that got fast-tracked last quarter." "That's my bet." "Then it's going to get worse." Jade nodded. "That's why I need a freeze request on the land registry. Emergency injunction citing pending federal review and indigenous site reassessment." "You're playing the archaeological clause. It worked in Vermont last year, only because they had tribal backing. I've got something better." She pulled out a folder. Inside, aerial photos, hand-marked soil analysis from 1984, and one notarized letter from a retired state geologist who once declared a burial mound near her creek as worthy of historic review but never formally surveyed. Darius blinked. "You kept this." "I knew they'd come." By late afternoon, The papers were filed. Langford and Chase submitted the injunction request to the Richland County Register's office, the State Heritage Board, and preemptively CC'd the FAA. Why FAA? Because CrossLogix also had aviation-linked defense projects, and Jade knew how to sting where it hurts. That evening, back at the house, a silver SUV parked half a mile up the dirt road. Jade didn't go out. Didn't need to. She just sent out Protocol Echo, a silent ping to all Sentinel nodes in the area. It wasn't an attack. It was a warning, a ripple, a signal to others. Within 30 minutes, 4 off-grid Sentinel operators within the Tri-County radius logged into their dashboards. 2 retired Rangers, 1 nurse with Army background, and a retired comms officer from Fort Bragg. Jade didn't call them. They just saw the echo and knew what it meant. At 9:43 p. Mom. Jade checked the final reports from the day. Legal injunction sent, surveillance log uploaded, drone footage verified, CrossLogix pack trail mapped, off-grid Sentinel pings, 4 confirmed. She closed the file, then opened a new one, labeled Contingency Activation, Tier 1 Response. Inside, she outlined 3 phases: full exposure of private land grabs, ethics audit of zoning board and law enforcement ties, public hearing pressure using veteran coalitions and Sentinel network whistleblowers. It wasn't just about her land anymore. It was about precedent. By midnight, the dogs were asleep again, but Jade stayed up, writing, planning, and watching the tree line like it owed her something. It started with a single envelope taped to her mailbox, cream-colored, unmarked, no return address. Jade paused mid-stride as she reached for it. Sierra by her side. Titan let out a low growl, not loud, just enough for her to take a second look. Inside, 1 folded paper. No official letterhead. Just a printed notice. Due to increasing complaints from surrounding community members regarding erratic behavior, noise disturbances, and suspicion of unregistered animal training activity, the following properties are now under review for municipal evaluation and clearance. Her parcel was listed first. 3 more names below hers, all black landowners. Evaluation to commence within 72 hours. No phone number, no department seal, just a signature. District Municipal Safety Officer, Greg L. Varnes. Jade didn't flinch. They're escalating. She made 1 call, straight to Angela Watts, an old friend who now worked in the State Office of Municipal Affairs in Charleston. You ever heard of a clearance notice issued by a Varnes? Angela let out a short laugh. That guy. Wasn't he fired 2 years ago for falsifying records? You sure? Positive. He forged a wildlife hazard report to help a firm bulldoze part of a wetlands preserve. We stripped his credentials. Jade's voice stayed even. He's back in play. Angela sighed. They're using ghosts now. Later that afternoon, Jade pulled up local property logs. Sure enough, Greg L. Varnes was listed as the external compliance advisor on 3 recent municipal actions, all connected to land transfer recommendations in districts with high black land ownership. The paper trail had names she'd seen before, and that's when she recognized a bigger pattern. Each case included 1 tactic repeated: animal-related violations, barking complaints, improper fencing, unlicensed breeds. It was all a setup, a way to bypass land defense by claiming public safety risk. And now, they were targeting her military dogs. At 7:16 p.m., the first car showed up. Not a patrol car. Not unmarked either. It was worse. Animal control. 2 white trucks. One carried a cage rig. The other had side-stamped decals. County Emergency Response, Livestock and Dangerous Animal Division. Jade was already waiting at the gate. In uniform. Military dress blues. Clean. Pressed. Metal bar prominent on her chest. Titan sat to her left. Sierra to her right. Neither barked. Both simply stared. 2 officers stepped out. Both men. Nervous hands. Clipboards. One had a body cam on. The other, a GoPro strapped to his chest. She didn't say a word. Let the silence weigh down the air. "Ma'am," one finally said, "we received a report of aggressive dogs, possibly unregistered military-grade canines, on private land with no municipal clearance. Do you have a warrant?" "Ma'am, do you have a warrant?" The second man stepped forward, trying to play it softer. "Look, we're just doing our job. We were told to verify if the dogs are trained for combat, And they're service dogs, Jade said. Military issued. Medal awarded. Cleared under Federal Directive 183C. That's not what the system shows, the man said. You're not even listed in the civilian kennel registry. Jade stepped forward now, calm, dead still. You're not looking at the right system. Excuse me. You're looking at the civilian registry. My dogs are in the Department of Defense Service Animal Index, under Tier 1 classification. And unless you're federal, you don't have access. The men froze. One blinked fast. The other shifted his stance. You'll need to call your supervisor. And when you do, tell him this land is under active injunction, monitored by Sentinel ethics protocol. And any unauthorized incursion will be treated as harassment under Section 4B of the Veterans Land Protection Act. They left. Fast. No citations. No pictures. No cage open. Just silence and 4 reverse lights. But not before one of them muttered, "She's one of them." That night, the real storm hit. Not thunder, not wind. Social media. A local Facebook page, Protect Our County, posted blurry footage of Jade standing at her gate. Look what's being trained right here in our town. These aren't pets. They're weapons. Why does one woman need 2 combat dogs? The post went viral within 3 hours. Comment after comment. Looks like militia prep to me. Bet she's ex-military. PTSD types are unpredictable. Is that even her land? Who checked her deed? Why does she live so isolated? Jade read it all. Didn't flinch. Instead, she screenshot every post, flagged usernames, traced IPs, and found one common pattern. Most accounts were linked to a shell group funded by a PAC called Community Progress Fund, which just happened to be the largest donor to CrossLogix's local real estate subsidiary, and the man running their campaign division, Greg L. Varnes. She made another call, this time to Cassandra Moore, a black veteran-turned-civil rights attorney who ran a watchdog blog out of D.C. Cass, Jade said. They've started the smear campaign. Animal control showed up today. No warrant. Local page posted footage. Same playbook from the Mississippi land grab in 21, Cassandra said. Demonize the veteran. Frame the dogs. Paint the subject unstable. I need this one stopped fast. I'll post receipts. Give me screenshots and doc logs. You want a quiet takedown or full burn? Jade paused. Full burn. I want CrossLogix named. PAC funding trail exposed. I want the sheriff's office subpoenaed before they know what hit them. Done. You'll see it trending by morning. She didn't sleep that night. Neither did Sierra. Titan lay near the window, ears flicking at every sound. But Jade sat at the kitchen table, boots on the floor, notepad out, drawing what looked like a war map. Except this time, it was a legal war, a media war, an identity war. And when the sun rose, the headline on Cassandra's blog read, Veterans' dogs targeted by fake officials in South Carolina. Land battle. PAC ties uncovered. Under it, screenshots, financial records, campaign donations, quotes from the injunction filing, and a statement from a retired military officer confirming her record. The smear backfired. Jade didn't have to say a word. She let truth speak for her. Let the paper trail do the punching. And now, the entire town had to choose. Believe the woman who served 19 years in silence, or the ones trying to erase her with fake forms and frightened whispers. The trouble didn't knock this time. It came roaring up the dirt road, 4 vehicles deep, kicking up clouds of red Carolina clay. Dust swirled like smoke signals in the early morning air. Jade stood on her porch, coffee in hand, unmoved. Titan was already posted near the fence line. Sierra, ears high, crouched low in the grass. From the moment the lead vehicle skidded to a stop, Jade already knew. They weren't here to ask questions. She could smell it in the way doors opened too fast, feel it in the boots that stomped instead of stepped. There were 5 deputies. One of them, Sheriff Curtis Mace, got out last. Slower, heavier, and more smug than she remembered from the county board meetings. Mrs. Walker, he called out, voice echoing a practiced drawl. We got some concerns about activity on this property. You always bring backup to discuss concerns, she replied, casually sipping her coffee. Depends on the concern. And what is it today? Ghost zoning, dog barking, unauthorized breathing. We've received multiple reports about you training combat animals without oversight. Your neighbor saw your dogs chasing someone near the creek line. Jade raised one brow. My nearest neighbor lives 2 miles east. Try again. Sheriff Mace's eyes narrowed. He pulled a folded paper from his jacket. We're issuing a temporary removal order. These animals will be detained for 48 hours while we verify their registration and behavior assessments. Sierra let out a low, sharp bark. Mace took an instinctive half-step back. You're not taking them. Ma'am, you are obstructing a county-level animal enforcement action, and you're obstructing a federal land injunction that supersedes local ordinances. This land is under review by the State Historic Board, and those dogs are registered under DoD Tactical Companion Code Red Alpha. You want to touch them? Call the Pentagon first. 2 of the younger deputies shifted nervously. They hadn't expected this. No one had. Jade never once raised her voice. She didn't need to. The uniform did the talking. The calm tone, the measured stillness, it all said the same thing. I've been through worse than you, and I'm still standing. Sheriff Mace stepped forward again, but before he could speak, a black Suburban pulled up fast and quiet. Out stepped Darius Chase, briefcase in one hand, court file in the other. Sheriff, Darius called, smiling without warmth. This is what we're doing now. Intimidation patrols before breakfast. Mr. Chase, this is a county matter. Incorrect. This is a federal overlay zone currently under legal injunction, and any attempt to enforce non-emergency removal of government-registered animals without a warrant signed by a federal judge is not just unlawful, it's reckless. He handed the sheriff a thick folder. Also, here's the cease and desist order, filed 10 minutes ago, effective immediately. You have no jurisdiction here until our hearing next Thursday. Mace looked at the paper, scanned it, then folded it and shoved it into his pocket without reading the rest. You know, he muttered. Folks around here used to solve things face to face. Jade didn't blink. Tell that to the folks funding your re-election campaign. The same ones trying to buy this land through shell trusts and silence. The sheriff left, but not before turning to spit into the dirt and mutter something under his breath. Jade didn't care, because this time it was all on record. Darius had made sure of it. That night, local news picked up the story, but not from a reporter. From a leaked drone clip posted on a veteran's message board, sheriff confronts decorated veteran in early morning dog seizure attempt. Legal rep shuts it down. The video went viral. Again, thousands of comments poured in. She didn't even flinch. That's leadership. You don't get to bully those who defended you. They thought she was alone. They were wrong. The next day, Jade received a letter. This one was different. No fake logos, no shady envelopes. This one was from Senator Mark Hughes, a longtime veterans' rights advocate. Inside, a short note. Mrs. Walker, I've been briefed on the events in Richland County. I'd like to speak privately regarding your case and its wider implications. We are currently reviewing federal land protection oversight lapses tied to post-service veteran land ownership. Your testimony could help shape national legislation. Respectfully, Senator Hughes. Jade didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. But she did sit still for a long time, staring out the window. Dogs asleep by her feet, wondering how long it had taken for someone to finally connect the dots. Then came the final straw. 3 nights later, a fire. Not big. Not on her house, but at the fence line, near the spot she'd tied the blue ribbon. Burnt brush, melted ribbon, ash left behind like a signature. No one took credit. No cameras caught it. But Jade knew what it meant. They weren't trying to intimidate her anymore. They were trying to provoke her. Force a mistake. A reaction. Something they could use. She didn't take the bait. Instead, she called Cassandra. They set fire to the ribbon site. You okay? No damage, just a message. Time for a louder message back. You ready for the leak? Already scheduled. We'll drop the internal pack memos tied to cross logics at 8 dawn. Then tag every media watchdog and legal org on the map. We're bringing the entire operation into the light. Jade closed the call, then walked outside, looked up at the stars. No anger in her eyes, just strategy, clarity, and something deeper, resolve. Because they could throw false papers. They could send weak men in fake trucks. They could light a fire and think it'd scare her. But they forgot one thing. Jade Walker had survived war, and now she was about to bring one of her own. By 8. 1A. Meme. The firestorm was already spreading. Not on Jade's land, but online. Cassandra Moore had done what she promised. The first leak dropped sharp and clean. Exclusive. Cross-Logic's pack. Internal memos reveal plans to displace veterans from targeted land parcels. It wasn't just a blog post. It came with PDFs, emails, and a whistleblower audio clip. One voice, identified later as Greg L. Varnes, said clearly, "We won't need to buy the land if the state deems it unsafe. Push animal complaints. Start with veterans. They're isolated. Easier to discredit." By 8:15, it hit Twitter or X, as some insisted on calling it. By 8:27, 3 national reporters had shared it. By 9:02, a senior advisor to Senator Hughes had called Jade's phone directly. "You need to be in D.C. this week," the advisor said. "Your case isn't just local anymore." At the gate, Titan stood alert as 3 more news vans parked awkwardly along the road. Cameras lifted. Drones buzzed in the distance. A young white reporter in jeans and a t-shirt cautiously walked up the drive. "Me? Walker. I'm from Carolina National News. We'd like to ask about the footage. And the dogs." Jade didn't smile. "You want a photo op? Or the truth?" "The truth." She stepped aside. "Then walk with me. But don't point that mic unless you're ready to cover the whole story." She didn't rehearse, didn't recite. She simply walked and spoke, voice calm but clear. Explained the fake violations, the fake complaints, the timeline, the fires, the sheriff, and most importantly, the silence from local officials. "Even after the leaks, you ever wonder?" she said, pausing beneath the old pine tree near the back barn. "Why these stories always start with one neighbor being concerned?" "Yes," the reporter replied softly. "Because that's all it takes in this country. One suspicion to become justification. One whispered lie to light the match." The segment aired that evening, and by morning, Jade Walker wasn't just a name. She was a face, a headline, a movement. Veterans groups shared her video. Dog handlers reposted clips of Titan and Sierra working through drills in perfect silence. Civil rights lawyers started using the hashtag #LandIsHonor. And the most unexpected ally of all, retired General Raymond Booker. He posted a single paragraph on LinkedIn that sent shockwaves through the system. "I served with Sergeant Jade Walker. She ran recon in Ramadi and handled 3 canine units under fire. If a sheriff thinks he can intimidate a woman like that, he's either stupid or working for someone who's paying him to be." The post got 7 million views in 24 hours. But not everyone stayed quiet. By midday, Cross-Logix released a PR statement claiming they had no knowledge of any misconduct and did not authorize any targeted land evaluations. Cassandra dropped the next leak an hour later. A spreadsheet of campaign donations from Cross-Logix to 11 local officials, including Sheriff Mace. One name on that list, Judge Harold McGowan, the man assigned to Jade's upcoming injunction hearing. That night, Jade received a call from Senator Hughes himself. "I'll be blunt. We need you here in person." "What's the play?" "We're preparing a hearing, not just about your land, but about how veterans across the country are being targeted through zoning tricks, false complaints, and quiet clearance tactics." "You want me to testify?" "I want them to hear what a war hero sounds like when she's been backed into a corner." Jade was silent for a beat. Then, "I'll be there." Before she left, she walked the land one more time, checked the corners, refastened the camera feeds, fed the dogs. And then she did something she hadn't done in years. She pulled the old military chest from under her bed. Inside, her medals, old mission patches, letters from the field, and a folded piece of canvas. She unwrapped it carefully. Inside, her original deployment map, creased and faded, marked with red ink and code notes from a time when the enemy was halfway across the world. Now, the enemy's wearing polos and handing out property deeds, she muttered. Jade left for say, at dawn, wearing dress blues. Titan and Sierra stayed behind under the care of trusted veterans nearby, but not before she whispered to them at the gate. "Guard it like it's combat ground." Because it is. The plane touched down at Reagan National Airport to a quiet fanfare. No red carpet, no cameras, just a line of black women in suits, activists, aides, organizers, waiting to walk her straight into a conference room lined with flags and journalists. Someone handed her a coffee. Another offered to touch up her uniform. Jade shook her head. Let it crease. I want them to see the wear. When she finally stepped before the microphone, at the pre-hearing media forum, the room went still. Not because she looked powerful, but because she looked exactly like someone who'd been underestimated one too many times. My name is Sergeant Jade Walker, she said, voice steady. I served this country with silence and sweat. I didn't ask for this fight, but now that it's here, I'm not leaving it unfinished. Land isn't just acreage. For some of us, it's legacy. It's the last thing no one could take. Until now, no applause. Just a slow wave of nods from across the room. And somewhere near the back row, a reporter whispered, "That wasn't a speech. That was a war cry." The hearing room wasn't built for tension, but that morning, it felt like it was holding its breath. Thick wooden panels, rows of congressional aides, a dozen media outlets crowded in the back, 3 committee chairs at the front, flanked by nameplates in sharp suits. In the middle, Jade Walker, standing tall in her marine dress blues, medals lined down her chest like silent witnesses. Senator Mark Hughes leaned into his mic. This committee convenes to investigate systemic abuse tied to unlawful displacement and surveillance of veteran landowners, particularly women and minorities. Today, we welcome Sergeant Jade Walker, former K-9 tactical lead, recipient of the Bronze Star, and resident of Richland County, South Carolina. A pause, a nod from Jade. Miss Walker, you have the floor. She didn't begin with anger. She didn't even begin with her story. She began with a map, unfurled it on the table, creased from use, faded from memory. It showed land parcels marked red across the southeast. Dozens of them. These are plots owned by veterans. Every single one has received either false code violations, zoning reviews, or baseless animal complaints in the last 18 months. 42% are black veterans. 78% live within a 30-mile radius of high-priority real estate developments. She looked up. This isn't random. This is coordinated displacement by inconvenience. Gasps. Pens paused mid-sentence. One of the aides stopped typing. Senator Brannigan, an older man from Wyoming, raised an eyebrow. You're suggesting there's a system targeting these properties? I'm not suggesting. I'm confirming. She reached into the folder beside her, pulled out an email chain, one already leaked online but now submitted to Congress. This is from CrossLogic's PAC. Internal notes discuss strategies to clear high-risk veteran holders quietly and flag them through local code partnerships. They refer to people like me as legacy blockers. That's what we are to them. Obstacles, not citizens. Senator Hughes leaned forward. And the sheriff in your district received campaign donations through an energy real estate trust tied to CrossLogic's. He filed 6 complaints in 30 days. None of them stuck. But that wasn't the point. The goal wasn't to win in court. It was to bury me in paper. And to scare me. She paused. They forgot what war teaches you. You stop being scared. The room was still, except for the cameras clicking like distant gunfire. Then came the turn. There's more, Jade said, voice lower now. The system targeting me didn't stop at paperwork. They sent officers, tried to take my nose. Dogs trained to detect IEDs and alert to stress signals. They lit fire to my ribbon marker. The one I placed where a black soldier was buried without honors after the Civil War. They wanted me to lash out, to make a mistake, so they could paint me as unstable. Senator Brannigan cleared his throat. Were you ever diagnosed with PTSD? Yes. Sarah. And I treat it, like I treat my land, with vigilance, not shame. That answer landed like a hammer. Behind her, several veterans stood quietly, not called, not asked. They simply rose, dress uniforms. Civilians, a silent line of living history behind one woman telling her truth. Then Cassandra stepped forward. Permission to submit an addendum. Madam Chair. Granted. She handed over a document. 74 pages of PAC-led policy influence. Shell LLCs. And pre-written zoning ordinance drafts offered to small towns in exchange for infrastructure contracts. In the middle of it, a pilot program quietly pitched to counties in the South under the name Sentinel Redevelopment. The goal: identify underutilized rural land with long-term turnover potential. That's a fancy way of saying, find the black landholders with no lawyers and bury them in code until they sell, Cassandra said. Senator Hughes tapped his papers. Miss Walker, What do you want from this committee? Jade looked straight ahead. I don't want sympathy. I want accountability. I want this body to force a federal ethics overlay on all real estate development PACs. I want a binding registry for political donations tied to land use votes. I want a moratorium on enforcement against veteran-owned land without federal-level review. She took a breath. And I want you to stop pretending that this is just about me. The session adjourned with applause, but Jade didn't stay for it. She stepped out the side door. Reporters followed, but she didn't stop. Until, "Ma'am, how do you feel right now?" She turned. Let the silence stretch, like someone just heard me. That night, the coverage exploded. CNN ran the headline, "Veteran exposes systemic targeting." They called us legacy blockers. MSNBC aired the full 7-minute clip of her testimony. TikTok blew up with edits of her quote, "I don't want sympathy. I want accountability." And back in South Carolina, the county office phones rang off the hook. Veterans began showing up at zoning meetings. The sheriff's office posted a vague statement about procedural integrity, but the silence said more than any press release. 2 days later, Jade got a letter from the Department of Justice. They were opening a federal investigation into zoning practices in her county, and 7 others. That night, Jade stood alone at her gate, Titan next to her, Sierra watching the horizon. She looked out at her land, silent, dark, sacred, and she whispered, "We just cleared the first perimeter." The quiet came first. After the hearings, after the headlines, after the applause, came stillness. Jade returned to her land to find the gates untouched, the cameras blinking steadily, and Sierra waiting by the porch like nothing had changed. But everything had. There were no sheriff cruisers in sight, no paper violations tucked under her fence, no thinly veiled code inspections, just bird song and the soft rhythm of Titan's breathing as he paced the perimeter like a soldier on watch. "It's too quiet," Jade murmured, scanning the tree line. For the first time in weeks, there was no attack, no chaos, no press. It made her more anxious than all of it combined, because people like Sheriff Mace didn't quit, and companies like CrossLogix didn't retreat without a plan. They just recalibrated, shifted their strategy, used silence as cover. The next strike came not through a sheriff's badge, but a signature. Jade received a notice from the county registrar's office. A new proposal had been filed to rezone the entire township, including her land, under an infrastructure development corridor. If passed, it would give the county power to eminent domain Jade's land for critical infrastructure realignment. Translation: they were trying to take her home through legal channels. And this time, it would look clean, civil, orderly, like progress. Cassandra was already on the phone before Jade could ask. They're shifting tactics, making it look like it's about the economy, not race or retaliation. "They're testing the optics," Jade said coldly, "seeing if people will still care after the headlines move on. We need to move faster. I have whistleblowers, but we need something stronger." "How strong?" Cassandra paused. "You still have that drone footage from the night they came for you." Jade nodded slowly. "I do." "Then let's show the world how they act when they think no one's watching." The next morning, Cassandra released part 2 of her investigation, Operation Quiet Storm. Inside the playbook to erase veteran-owned land. The headline alone hit hard, but the real blow came from the footage. Clear video of officers stepping onto Jade's land without a warrant. One cop heard saying, "Just record anything that looks off. Doesn't matter if it holds in court." "We need pressure." Another muttering. "She'll crack once we get the dogs out." "Bet." The video went viral within hours, and the backlash was immediate. Senator Hughes called again. "This footage confirms illegal trespassing and misuse of authority. The DOJ is expanding their investigation scope. You may have just triggered a national review." "Good," Jade said quietly. "But I need this to stop here, before they take someone else's land while the spotlight's still on me." But even with the nation watching, the local county board moved forward with the rezoning hearing. They scheduled it in a small courthouse room. No press allowed. Limited public comment. No live stream. They thought no one would come. They were wrong. The day of the hearing, over 200 people showed up. Veterans, activists, journalists. Even General Booker flew in from Virginia, standing silently in the back with his arms crossed. But it was Jade who walked to the microphone with the kind of quiet confidence that made men in suits sweat. "My name is Jade Walker. I served this country for 16 years. I trained dogs to sniff out explosives and shield civilians. And now I stand here defending the only land I've ever called home." She held up the county's own zoning report. "It refers to my property as strategically valuable, not because of what's on it, but because of who isn't supposed to have it." She turned her gaze toward the board. "But I am still here, and I still have the deed." The board tried to silence her, tried to cut her comment time, but the room erupted when a Vietnam vet in a wheelchair shouted, "Let the woman speak," and so she did. For 11 minutes straight, no notes, no anger, just truth. Then, something unexpected happened. A young white woman on the board, Councilmember Rachel Monroe, stood up. "I didn't sign off on this language," she said, pointing to the rezoning document. "This was slid into the final draft without full review. I vote no on this proposal." Her words caused a stir. Another board member wavered, then folded. Within the hour, the rezoning motion failed by a single vote. Outside, cameras waited. But Jade didn't stop to speak. She walked to the line of veterans standing at the gate, looked them each in the eye, and said, "This isn't over. But it's our turn now." Back at home, that night, she received a message from a blocked number. A single sentence. "Check the east boundary. 2, Mom." Quietly, she didn't flinch. She just suited up at exactly 2. "Oi, May." She and Sierra moved silently to the far edge of the property. That's where she saw him, a man in a hoodie, kneeling by the fence. But he wasn't planting anything. He was digging something out. She waited. Let Sierra freeze him in place without a sound, then stepped forward. "Who sent you?" He looked up, young, afraid, and desperate. "No one. I used to work for the site team. They buried files out here, real plans, survey maps. The ones showing what they knew was protected land. Why now?" "Because you made it safe to talk." 2 hours later, Jade held in her hand proof that CrossLogix had lied to the county, the state, and the feds. Original topographic data, signed documents mapping endangered species territory, clearly marked and ignored. The company had deliberately buried the reports to justify taking land by force. Now, Jade had them. She scanned the file, backed them up twice, and sent them to Cassandra, to Hughes, and to DOJ. Then she lit a fire in the pit out back, burned the extra copies, and watched the smoke rise over the same field where she'd once trained bomb-sniffing dogs to sit at the scent of plastic explosives. "You think I can't win just because I'm quiet?" she said to no one. "You forgot who taught me how to fight." Jade didn't need a headline to know when the wind was shifting. The documents had done more than stall the rezoning. They had exposed a larger rot, one that ran deep through county lines and up the chain of political favor, and it was time to find who fed it. The next morning, Cassandra called. "We traced the name on the suppressed ecology reports. All roads lead to a single man." "Let me guess," Jade said. "Someone with clean shoes and a dirt-free conscience." Victor Langston, former deputy director of urban growth for the state, retired, quiet. But he sits on the advisory board of CrossLogix's parent company. "Of course he does." Jade exhaled. The name was familiar. Langston had been the architect of dozens of regeneration zones statewide. Slick talker, always framed his projects as progress. But veterans and farmers knew better. He was the man with a pen that silently erased roots. He's giving a talk at the State Land Summit this Friday. Cassandra continued. Topic: leveraging private capital for public prosperity. "You want in?" Jade didn't answer right away. She looked out over her field, where Titan and Sierra sat in calm formation, watching her every move. "Yeah, I want in." The summit was held in a sprawling downtown hotel. Carpets too soft, lighting too polite. Jade entered not as a protester, but as a veteran landowner invited to listen. She took her seat quietly, 2 rows back from the front, eyes fixed on the stage. Langston stepped out in a gray suit, trim, smiling, polished. He opened with a joke about soil and spreadsheets. The crowd chuckled. Jade didn't blink. "When we think about underutilized land," Langston said, "we're not talking about taking. We're talking about unlocking potential, helping communities participate in the broader economic rise." Jade could feel her jaw tense. This man had never walked the perimeter of a farm at dawn, had never buried a dog that saved his life, had never fought for land with both hands and history behind him. And in these rural zones, Langston continued, we often find plots held by single families for generations. Without full optimization, we step in to bring structure. Structure, that was the word he used for erasure. When the session broke for questions, Jade stood. No introduction, no preamble, just voice, clear and low. Mr. Langston, when your company buried reports about protected lands, endangered habitats, was that optimization too? The room shifted. Langston blinked. I'm sorry, And when your people referred to veterans as legacy blockers, was that part of the prosperity plan? Now people turned. Phones lifted. Some started recording. Ma'am, if you have a concern. Oh, I have receipts. Jade held up the email printouts. The drone footage stills. The suppressed survey maps. And the DOJ has copies too. Langston's smile faltered. Just for a second. But it was enough. The rest of the summit unraveled. Reporters swarmed Jade by the exit. But she said nothing more than, ask him. By nightfall, Langston issued a statement. These allegations are deeply concerning. I was unaware of any such practices and will fully cooperate with the investigation. The internet wasn't buying it. Neither was the DOJ. 3 days later, a federal indictment was unsealed. Langston, 2 executives, a former county zoning director. Charges: conspiracy, falsification of federal documents, and civil rights violations. CrossLogix's stock tanked 38% in a day. Major donors pulled out. 2 state-level projects were frozen mid-construction. But that wasn't the part that made Jade stop in her tracks. What hit her was a letter from a name she hadn't seen in years. Lutty. Colonel Amelia Boone, her old commander. One line stood out. You've done more on civilian soil than most generals do in combat. Jade folded the letter quietly. Outside, Titan nudged the porch door open with his nose. Sierra followed, head low, calm but alert. Jade rose to meet them. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Because for the first time in months, the land felt still, but not empty, not abandoned. Protected by truth, by action, and by the woman who refused to be erased. 3 weeks passed. No more threats. No unmarked cars idling at the edge of her property. No helicopters buzzing overhead in the early dawn. Just silence. Not the kind born of retreat, but the kind carved out by victory. Jade sat on her porch, one boot on the railing, coffee cooling in her hand. Titan dozed nearby, twitching occasionally in his sleep. Sierra sat upright, ears perked, eyes scanning the horizon even though there was nothing there. Not anymore. The federal case against CrossLogix had snowballed. Once the suppressed land surveys were made public, whistleblowers came out of hiding. 2 former engineers confirmed falsified data. 1 board member turned state's witness, revealing internal emails with racial targeting terms like legacy removals and soft evictions. The headlines kept coming, but Jade didn't chase them. She'd never wanted to be famous. She just wanted to be left alone. Still, people showed up, quietly, respectfully. A veteran from Tennessee brought homemade dog biscuits and said, Ma'am, I don't say much, but the way you stood, that meant something to all of us. A teenager from Atlanta dropped off a sketch he drew of Titan and Sierra mid-stance, eyes fierce. I saw the video. Y'all looked like a unit, like you didn't need words. A woman in her 60s mailed her a newspaper clipping with a note. You proved we don't have to scream to be strong. Jade didn't reply to them all, but she kept every message, filed them in a weathered green folder she labeled, Proof I Wasn't Crazy. One afternoon, she received a request from the National Defense Ethics Commission. They wanted her to testify, not about her military service, but about how civilian systems had misused authority. You've become a national case study. The letter read, We believe your experience can inform new interagency reform. Jade sighed. She didn't want a spotlight, but she also knew, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. She flew to D.C. alone. No entourage. No press. Just a pressed gray suit. 2 dogs sleeping back home. And a memory of being surrounded by cops with itchy fingers and no valid warrant. Her opening line was simple. I'm not here because I barked louder than them. I'm here because I refused to move. The room went quiet. A senator raised an eyebrow. Another leaned forward. Jade continued. They surrounded my land like it was theirs. Treated me like a trespasser in my own home. But I didn't curse. I didn't threaten. I just stood my ground, and my dog stood with me. A pause. The system didn't back me until it got embarrassed. Let's build one that doesn't need to be shamed into doing its job. Silence. Then applause. From the audience. From staffers. Even from a few who probably hadn't clapped for a black woman in uniform before. Afterward, one of the ethics directors approached her. "Mrs. Walker, there's talk of naming a new federal training module after this case." "Let me guess," Jade smirked. "Call it, 'Don't Push Veterans Off Their Own Land.'" The woman smiled. "Actually, we're calling it the Walker Protocol." Jade blinked, then nodded. Slowly. "That'll do." She returned to her land 2 days later. The sun was setting. The sky was wide and unbothered. And as she stepped from her truck, Titan let out a deep, rolling bark. Not a warning, but a welcome. Sierra trotted out next, tail wagging low. Protective as always, Jade dropped her bags, crouched, and pulled both dogs in close. No press, no applause. Just the sound of peace returning to the soil beneath her boots. And the truth echoing in her chest. They thought they could break me with noise, but I built my silence like armor. The frost came early that year. Jade watched from her porch as the wind curled through the dry fields, bending the grass but never breaking it. Titan sat at her feet, older now, but steady. Sierra lay curled near the fire pit, ears flicking with every rustle, still alert, still hers. The land had survived, not because she fought with rage, but because she fought with memory. Every square foot held history. Boot prints from her father, ashes from a barn once burned by a storm, a corner fence post once repaired by a boy she never saw again. They tried to price it, rezone it, rename it, but they couldn't unwrite it. News trickled in from D.C. The Walker Protocol was formally adopted into federal training programs for land use officers, police departments, and private security firms. Jade didn't celebrate. She just nodded, then went back to tending the soil. Sometimes victory isn't loud. It's a morning with no threats, a mailbox not vandalized, a woman able to walk her land without scanning the tree line. One letter did stop her, though. A school teacher in Oklahoma had assigned her testimony to a civics class. One student had written this: "We always learned that power meant speaking up. But Ms. Walker showed us it also means knowing when to be still." Jade folded the letter and placed it in her green folder, the one marked "Proof I Wasn't Crazy." It was full now. She didn't need another page. Down the road, the development project had been halted indefinitely. The land remained untouched. For now, other families, once on the verge of selling, chose to stay. A small group formed a local landowners union. They called it the Sentinel Circle. Jade didn't run it. She didn't want to, but they always left a chair open for her at the meetings. One afternoon, a young officer came by in a marked cruiser, badge freshly issued, eyes nervous. He removed his hat before stepping onto her porch. "Ma'am, I just wanted to say, I studied your case in training, and I hope I carry myself better than those who didn't." Jade looked him over. He was barely out of high school, still figuring out the difference between a rule and a principle. But at least he'd showed up without arrogance. That was something. "Then don't just say it," she said. "Live it." He nodded, straightened his shoulders, and left quietly. Titan didn't growl once. That night, Jade lit a small fire in the pit behind the house. No ceremony, no words, just crackling wood and the dogs close by. She poured a cup of hot cider, leaned back, and looked at the stars. She'd survived systems, silence, and shadows, not by yelling, not by breaking down, but by being unshakable. And now the land was quiet, not like before, when quiet meant waiting for the next blow. This was different. It was earned. She had protected her soil, not just with fences, but with principle, with presence, with the stillness of a warrior who never needed to raise her voice to be heard. What would you have done in Jade's shoes? Tell us where you're watching from, and if you've ever had to stand your ground in silence, drop your thoughts below. Your voice matters, even when it's quiet.